everyone, my name is Michelle Gomes. Today we're going to talk a little bit about sensory processing disorder, what exactly it is, what it looks like in the classroom, and then we're also going to learn a little bit more about a sensory pathway and the road that we took to get a sensory pathway installed at my children's local elementary school. So the reason why I'm so invested in sensory processing disorder is because my 5-year-old Wyatt was recently diagnosed with sensory processing disorder. He has since started an occupational therapy, but I wanted to make sure that there were some supports in place prior to him starting kindergarten, and I knew that the sensory pathway would be a phenomenal way for him to get some of the sensory input and output that he needs. So what is sensory processing disorder? According to the Star Institute for Sensory Processing Disorder, the definition is a neurological disorder in which the sensory information that the individual perceives results in abnormal responses. The more formal definition is that sensory processing disorder is a neurophysiologic condition in which sensory input either from the environment or from one's body is poorly detected, modulated, or interpreted, and or to which atypical responses are observed. Some have compared it to a traffic jam in one's brain. Everything just gets so jammed up from all of the sensory input that they don't have a way to really release it. And so the sensory pathway, the movements from that allows children to clear these jams in their brain and their neurological pathways. So what does sensory processing disorder look like in the classroom? A lot of child with sensory processing disorder may not be able to
They're easily distracted.
sit or focus.
A lot of times this is because the other sensory things in the room are just so loud or so bothersome. So something that could sound like a whisper to you and I could sound like yelling to a child with SPD. Or the light hum of a light in the room can be not anything for us to think about, but it can be overwhelming to a child with SPD, and that's all they can think of. Difficulty with transitions, that can be a huge issue with children with SPD. And if there is like a change in schedule, they need plenty of notice. All of these frustrations with the transitions and being easily distracted can cause frequent tantrums. A lot of times these frequent tantrums can also become because they have a ton of excess energy. This also comes with difficulty regulating their emotions. Something that would be very minor to a typically developing child could be like the end of the world to a child with SPD. All of these emotional triggers can cause aggressive behaviors. They can end up hitting or kicking classmates or throwing materials just because they can't handle their emotions. Therefore, it can affect their interactions with other children. They can have difficulty making and maintaining friendships. Oftentimes, children with SPD are also risk takers. So instead of going up the stairs and climbing, or going up the stairs and sliding down a slide, they would climb to the top of the slide and jump off. An example of sensory processing disorder, this wasn't actually in the classroom, but it's a fantastic example of how sensory can just completely overload their minds and cause them to melt down. So my son was very excited about playing soccer. He had been looking forward to it for quite some time, and he had his very first practice on Saturday. We have even worked with his occupational therapist on getting him to wear socks to lead up to wearing shin guards, because typically he would only wear Crocs. So anyways, we got him to soccer practice, and he played for maybe a maximum of 5 minutes because the only thing that he could focus on was the itchiness of his socks.
So what is a sensory path? According to Todd Springs with Fit and Fun Playscapes, a sensory path is a colorful, creative, and playful way for kids to build sensory pathways, which are connections in the brain that are responsible for sight, touch, sound, etc., which enable kids to complete complex, multi-stage tasks. A sensory path is a great way for kids to develop motor skills like balance, hand-eye coordination, and spatial awareness. The pathways are normally made with stickers that can be stuck to any surface. These pathways can give children a brain break, especially children that are high energy. It's designated for sensory play, which is to stimulate your child's senses. And it also helps children sit still and focus for longer. So not only is a sensory pathway beneficial for children with sensory processing disorder, but almost all early elementary age children can benefit from a sensory pathway. The first step in creating the sensory pathway was to meet with our school's administration to figure out a way to fund the sensory pathway and to see if she would be open to having the sensory pathway in her school. We actually really lucked out because there was a grant in Pitt County available for 3 schools to have a sensory pathway. So then we just needed to choose what theme we wanted and would fit best with our school's mascot, which is bears. After that, we just got to order the materials, and then it took about half of a day for installation. Our custodians prepped the floors for us, and we put some extra coats of wax on top of the stickers to ensure that they stay for quite some time. And here is the finished product.